Nalinaksha Sanyal was born in November 1898 in the village of Dhoradaha in the Nadia district of Bengal. His family was educated but not well off. They owned a patch of land and partly depended on agricultural income. His ancestral house in Dhoradaha is a modest single-story affair. Nalinaksha's elder brother, Anadikanto, was a member of the Anushilan Samiti. During 1914 to 15, Nalinaksha was an active member of Baghajotin's Juganto network and was involved in building a revolutionary network in the Nadia-Murshidabad belt. He was arrested during the police crackdown following Baghajotin's death, but was eventually let off as nothing incriminating could be found on him. However, he remained part of the surviving group of Juganto revolutionaries led by Amarendranath Chatterjee in Nadia and worked closely with the Anushilan Samiti network run by Pratul Chandra Ganguly in nearby Murshidabad. Not surprisingly, he was constantly on the radar of the police. In 1916, he was arrested at 4 a.m. on the last day of his Intermediate of Arts examinations, when he was to appear for his logic paper. Just hours earlier, Nalinaksha had seen a suspicious person loitering around his home and guessed that he might be an informer. Therefore, he had burned all the papers and hidden his pistol. The authorities nonetheless were not going to let him off so easily and hauled him before the magistrate. After much begging, the magistrate let him appear for the paper under police surveillance, and he was taken to the lockup immediately afterwards. Despite the circumstances, Nalinaksha Sanyal would place 11th in the overall order of merit at Calcutta University, and in logic he secured the highest marks. Nalinaksha joined Presidency College and immediately became the leader of a group of students sympathetic to the revolutionary cause. Unlike Subhas, Nalinaksha was already a hardened activist when he joined college. He and his brother were soon arrested under the Defence of India Act for terrorist activities after a number of intelligence officers were killed in Calcutta. Again he was let off after weeks of severe interrogation for lack of evidence, even though the police were certain he had links with armed groups. His brother Anadi was not so lucky and died of internal injuries caused by torture in Rangpur jail. This incident had a big influence on Nalinaksha. On his release, Chittaranjan Das reached out to Nalinaksha and brought him into the fold of the Congress. In 1920, he attended the Indian National Congress session in Nagpur. The session included the first All India Students' Conference, where Nalinaksha led the student delegation from Bengal. It was at this event that Nalinaksha met many national level leaders, including Sachindranath Sanyal. The Nagpur session endorsed Gandhi's non-cooperation movement, but like many activists with a revolutionary bent, Nalinaksha remained skeptical. In common with intellectuals such as Tagore, he was not convinced by Gandhi's insistence on boycotting educational institutions or the unnecessary rejection of modern technology. Nevertheless, he loyally participated in the movement after Chittaranjan Das endorsed it. In 1921, Nalinaksha joined the MA course in economics at Calcutta University. By this time, he was the leader of a large network of student activists. Their work was not always related to the freedom movement. For instance, Bengal was then in the grip of a cholera epidemic and thousands were dying from it. The very poor, particularly Dalits, had no medical help. The fear of infection was so great that there were many instances when no one was willing to do the last rites when a person died. Nolinakko organized a group of students who provided help to patients without support and performed the last rites when corpses were abandoned. In fact, he learned Hindu funeral rituals and performed the last rites of scores of abandoned corpses himself. There is an anecdote he would later recount about these times. It appears that Nolinakko and his acolytes would do most of their relief work at night by escaping from the university boys' hostel. They would return before dawn by way of a window kept strategically open on the first floor. However, on one occasion they were greeted by the hostel warden, who caught them red handed. After a severe scolding, they were told to have a full bath and then marched off to the office of Vice Chancellor Ashutosh Mukherjee. The Vice Chancellor was known as a strict, no nonsense man, and the students were more than a little worried about the punishment awaiting them. Mukherjee cross questioned them, and Nolinakko told him the truth. The Vice Chancellor then told them to go to the meeting room and await his judgment. The students were sure that they would be rusticated. Half an hour later, the door opened and Mukherjee walked in, attendants carrying haris, that is, earthen pots of the very best quality rosogollas. One hari was handed to each student, and then Mukherjee gruffly told them that their punishment was that they could not leave until they had each finished their share of rosogollas. Given his experience with organization and relief work, it is not surprising that Subhash Chandra Bose took Nolinakko along as his lieutenant when he was conducting relief efforts in North Bengal in 1922. After finishing his MA, Nolinakko took up the job of a lecturer at Krishnath College in Behrampur. He was also the key coordinator of the Swarajist faction of the INC in the Nadia-Murshidabad belt. The college became a hotbed of revolutionary activity during this period. It was also during this time that the nationalist poet Qazi Nazrul Islam was held in Bahrampur jail. The poet and the activist became the best of friends, a relationship they would retain for the rest of their lives. Chittaranjan Das's death in 1925 was a blow to Nonilakha. In common with Subhash Chandra Bose, he had lost his mentor. However, a year later he was able to secure a scholarship from a wealthy patron, Raja Monindra Chandra Nandi of Kashim Bazar, who funded his PhD at the London School of Economics, no small matter at that time. His doctoral thesis, Development of Indian Railways, is still in print and considered a must read for anyone interested in the early development of the railways in the subcontinent. Sanyal continued to actively protest against British colonial rule and was imprisoned 7 times. He was a vocal critic of the colonial government's policies during the Bengal famine in 1943. In 1946, Sanyal was at the forefront of efforts to avoid the partition of India. His suggestion of a loose federation was widely circulated and debated but was ultimately not adopted. When India was partitioned in 1947, he and Atulya Ghosh were able to convince the British to leave Malda district in India. The area had a population that was evenly divided between Hindus and Muslims. After the independence, Shanal remained an active force in building the new India and held many senior positions in government as well as represented India in international bodies. Sanyal was a modern personality and free thinker of his time. He married in 1924 with the daughter of Sharat Chandra Bhattacharya of Baharampur without any rituals. He was strongly against dowry, casteism, religious formalities. Even being a Brahmin, he invited his Muslim friend Qazi Nazrul Islam to his marriage ceremony, ignoring the social policing and restrictions. He established Dhoradaho Rajanikanto High School in 1961 at Dhoradaho in his father's name. In 1968, he established Korimpur Pannadevi College at Korimpur, Nadia district. He died on 29th October 1987.